Okay, so I'm going to talk about the heart triad a little bit, just because it took me a while to get what I feel is the most accurate heart fix for me, and I think that it can be hard to get right. So, especially if you're not a core image type, and as a fix, it can be hard, but just thought I would try to explain it. And so this goes for the core type, and just the heart fix in general. Uh, there are two outer types, the 2 and the 4, and then there's the core image point, which is 3. And the whole heart triad is identified often with shame, feelings of shame, your identity, your persona, who you are as a person. It can connect to your emotions too, of course. Often these can be feeling people, or they have, issues with emotions, but it's particularly about the stories that we tell ourselves about, who we are, and sort of the narrative that we've chose to stand in for us. They really kind of represent the personality and the persona, who others see and how we conceive of ourselves. This is all the space of the heart types. All right, so the 2 and the 4 on the outside, they say that the primary types are more malleable, almost like primary colors, and they can be shaped more than the outer points. So with the 2 and the 4, they each have more of a sense of kind of knowing who they are on some level, and in some sense being stuck with who they are, being kind of almost, with the 4 they're sort of burdened by it more, and with the 2 they feel sort of obligated to be a certain way, and they're steered in different directions based on that, and even pretty opposite directions too. So with the 2, they're often identified with pride. The whole image triad really is shame, and they each have a different way of managing that. But with 2, it's pride. They feel good about themselves for being good people, for helping other people, for being independent, and also for being selfless. And it's not always precisely like that with the 2. I think real world 2s end up being, less saintly than you'd expect, and they do ask for things from others, and they're just like anybody else, but their whole identity is sort of formed around this idea that all the heart types are trying to get love and appreciation from other people, seeing themselves almost as an object, objectifying, commodifying the self for other people. And the 2 believes that the best route to getting that love is by being of service to others, having something to offer them. Basically, they think, if I can't help somebody in a very direct way, if I can't offer them what they want and what they need, then they have no reason to love me back. So it's, in many ways, it makes perfect sense. It's kind of a mercantile attitude. I give you things, you give me things, and it goes back and forth like that. They're often open about the way that goes and how they feel about it, and in order to get away from those inner, feelings of shame and worrying that people won't love me, they come up with this image of false love, false abundance, that they're here for you, and they often appear more loving, more giving, more other oriented and generous, and that's kind of how their whole personality is built. And they have an independence about them, because in order to do that for you, they have this attitude that they don't need anything from you. So they often, unless they're coming to you asking for something, they generally like to be independent, and it's kind of supposed to be more of a one-directional thing. They want to have more to offer you than you have to offer them, because then they can keep the dependency going. Okay. So that's how 2 and the 2 fix operates. I think it's usually pretty easy to identify because of the way they are with this, that they show up for others, and they kind of are always the bigger person, and they have some pride about them, and they're givers and helpers, and so on and so forth. Okay, now we'll go to the other outward point, which is 4. And 4s, with shame, they take shame and they really feel it more. You know, the 2 and the 4, opposed to the 3, feel they're stuck with who they are. They kind of know who they are. You know, the 4, sometimes you hear explained that the 4 is searching for themselves and all this complicated stuff. They don't know themselves. And, you know, that's true to a point. There is truth to that, and they dig deep and they explore, and, you know, they are the deep sea divers of the psyche, as R&H like to say, but they still know who they are. They feel they're stuck with who they are, in a sense, that they are themselves. And often they feel that there's something kind of wrong with themselves. It's not that they feel it's everything, but they're aware of the ways that they're individual and unique from others. Often, you know, going through life, they saw other people conforming. They saw other people selling out, and they saw, you know, the more common 3 and 2 fixes, and they saw people going along with the crowd in conventions, and they saw themselves doing other stuff. They saw themselves being more individualistic and standing apart, and, you know, often not fitting in as well, and feeling that there was something sort of black sheep-esque about them, almost like they were cursed, you know, and this was internal to them. They kind of played it up in their minds. Remember, these are distortions. You know, the 2 feels they're excessively giving and prideful and all of that, but the 4 kind of feels that there's something wrong with them, or that they are more different from others than they really are. It's in their head, and it shapes their decisions. But, you know, some of the stereotypes about the 4 being this, you know, emo and all this stuff, it can happen, but that's not necessarily what it's about. They can be more emotional, and they can be more focused on authenticity. You can get that, but keep in mind, they've come to terms with this. They came to terms with it when they were young. So by the time they reach adulthood, you know, they could be very flamboyant and out there about their personality, their strangeness, you know, wearing their freak flag, you know, like Marilyn Manson or whatever. But if it's a fix, another type, they can be more muted about it. You get a full range. They're not always these flamboyant, you know, crazy identity people. They can be understated, and it's more internalized. But they sort of convert it into elitism. You know, they figure, okay, so I'm different, I've got something wrong with me, but I have to find the beauty in that, and I appreciate things more, and I appreciate the dark side, and so they sort of play up that black sheep whole dynamic. And so those 2, the 2 and the 4, really both feel they kind of are stuck within that on some level, because they're not primary types, and they feel they're kind of locked into that orientation, you know, that they, even maybe earlier in life, it's something they noticed more about themselves, that they're kind of themselves. They kind of are who they are, and they have to go with that. Whether they like it or not, you know, they can work within that, of course. They can improve, they can do the right thing, they can, same as everybody else, but they're different from the 3 in this sense. The 3 is the core image point, and they really feel that they're like a blank canvas, more than the other 2, that they see the ways in which they can change, and they can improve themselves, and they don't feel stuck kind of as who they are as much. They're the ones that have more of a confusion, you might say, about who they are, and you know, what they are and who they're going to be. There's not, with the 3, there's not a staple of a sense of that, because they really feel the person is a blank canvas, and you know, they go through different stages of different versions of themselves that they've constructed, that they've worked on, and it's something more conscious with them. They're very aware of the different types of things that can sell and that people can be into, and, you know, will kind of push the right buttons with people and get recognition. You know, all the heart types are trying to get love from other people, and sort of selling out the depths of who they are so that they can have an image to present. And the 3 is the one that really, they're the most detached from their shame, because they're in the center. So they don't play up their shame. like the 4 and say, okay, I'm so ashamed, but they're going to turn it into an elitism. Like there's something wrong with me, but that's cool, right? That's all good. I'm more authentic. I have something cool about me. A 4 is more likely to do that and to wear it well, but the 3 is more masking about all that. They're likely to cover up the flaws. The 4s really amplify them and come to terms with them and show them off. It becomes something that they wear on their sleeves. The 3 conceals it, and it's deception. They have deceit, and they have vanity, and they try to become different images. And there's more of a chameleonic, shape-shifting thing that they do. And the 3 fixers and the core 3s are more likely to feel like they can adapt themselves, and maybe they're not just stuck with who they are. There's more variability there. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Again, the 2, just to review, the 2 is pride, and it's about helping other people, serving them, and being a good person on some level. They're right next to 1. They're the image directly, connected to 1, next to 1, but in the image triad about being a good person, presenting something to others to help them, and to be independent. They can take care of themselves. It's kind of, a good situation for them, because then they're really in a good position to get love from others, because they're offering them something very directly, and they're not asking something of them directly. They kind of presume to be independent and then hope that they get love. And that's kind of the way they operate. They feel pride about that. Again, the shame is within these types. It's on the level of, not, being afraid that people don't love them, feeling they're not lovable, and being worried that there's something wrong with them, the truth of who they are, so they have to come up with some kind of a persona, some packaged personality, and that's the heart triad. And then the 4 is kind of the opposite. They pull inside themselves, and they say it's envy, that they're envious of other people. I think there's some of that. I think over time they do get envy that builds up, but everybody really can be envious. And you find 3s are very competitive type, and they often will use that envy towards others and that jealousy to motivate them. So the 4 is not, it's not all the time they're envious of people. It can be there, but it can be more subtle too, and it has more to do with them accepting their flaws and feeling stuck within their differences and feeling like they're forced to work with that as something that can be an elite thing, that there's got to be a double-edged sword there, and they're finding it, and they dig deeply into that and delve deeply into that, and there's more shame there. They've faced their shame more. They've really looked at themselves and confronted who they are. They may not always. Part of it is that they are never satisfied, and they feel stuck in some tragic loops. They never quite get there, but the idea that they don't know who they are is not quite true. I think that really the 4 knows themselves more intimately and more deeply in terms of their identity on some level, or at least thinks they do. They feel that they kind of are who they are, and they can't help that, and they want to explore it, but they're stuck within it, locked inside of that. And then they can have some envy towards other people who seem able to get outside of themselves, who seem, maybe if it's a 3 fix, or maybe it's another 4 fixer, they see who's realizing themselves more, and the 4s feel kind of held back within that, and they struggle more with that. Kind of being the black sheep, having whatever issues they have, being flawed and being hard on themselves, and sometimes just not being conventional success and mainstream things that people go for. They didn't. They kind of miss the bus on that stuff sometimes. And then the 3 is in the center. They feel they're really the ones that feel the self as a blank canvas, can be molded into different personalities. The 3 really pushes the limits of what they can do with themselves, what you can accomplish, what you can be. The problem is that they lose touch with their hearts in the process. They really sell themselves out more fully on some level than the other two, because the 3, at the end of the day, almost would literally do anything to get love. It's not that they have to be helpful and they want to offer you something, all this stuff. It's not that. And it's not that they're stuck as they are being authentic and you have to love them for who they are. And it's not that either. It's that they really kind of are willing to do whatever. So that can make them, that can be their downfall, because then they don't know who they are and they really lose themselves. And there's no sense of who they are. It becomes a blank canvas and a mask. And that's really the 3. I think people sometimes get these confused, or they go for more superficial things. You know, for a while I thought, surely I must have a 4 fix because I've been prone to depression and I'm artistic, and you know, I have image self-consciousness. I'm self-conscious and feel that I have flaws, and I'm aware of my flaws, all that stuff. Those are 4 things, but ultimately with me, there's more of a tendency to feel that I can be shaped and sculpted into something new, and to try to cover up my flaws as well as I can. The 3 is like to have a good, kind of sales pitch and marketing package for people, because they feel they have to. They have no choice. If they were to show all of their flaws and they were glaring and all of that, it's like they feel very exposed and they think that they would not be worthy of love. So with that fix, the 3 fix, they tend to want to conceal flaws more, and to be well put together and to be marketable and kind of a package. And the 4s feel like, no, paradoxically, the 4 fixers and 4s can be quite confident. They can be quite okay with themselves because they've faced that when they were kids. They've already kind of accepted it. It's the type 3s and the 2s that are a little bit more kind of lying to themselves a little bit more. The 2s kind of lie about being good people and doing things selflessly, and the 3s just kind of lie about the whole thing. They kind of become a lie. They become an image, and then there's no core self beneath all of that. So I hope this helps. I think that if you have a strong wing one way or the other, like I do, I figure I have a stronger 4 wing of my heart fix, it can be even harder to tell. So that's what I got. All right, thanks. Talk to you later.